Alright, so here's my solo flawless run and guide slash full walkthrough of the new Ghosts of the Deep dungeon. I'll be going in depth, no pun intended, about everything related to this dungeon, namely how to beat it, and specifically how to beat it on Arc Warlock. And I'm saying this as a middle-aged, average to above average controller player. Let's see if you can see that. Just a standard PS5 controller. I actually did this run on PC, but 95% of the time I'm playing on PS5. Not a huge difference between PC and PS5 for me. With the PC that I have, there's slight benefit to input lag on a monitor, but nonetheless. I've also got chronic hand injuries from my line of work, so I mean, this should tell you that if you consider yourself decent at Destiny 2, then this guide and gameplay should help you obtain the same success in completing the dungeon solo or in a team, and flawlessly if possible, because this gameplay is going to be flawless. This is pretty much how I've been spending my entire season of the Deep. As soon as this dungeon came out, it's pretty much, I've been steadfast on this thing. Slowly but surely I got to do my flawless run. Of course, I've run it numerous times on my other classes as well, just for my weekly farms and, you know, chance at exotics, but I've mainly just been having a lot of fun doing this dungeon. So with that said, I'll be going over the best seasonal artifacts to use, the arsenal of weaponry that you're going to want to bring with you. I'm going to explain the mechanics, the enemies, the environments, the full build breakdowns and strategies slash tactics. So yeah, let's get into it. As you can see, I've already got the gameplay going here. This is a new format for me, actually doing this editing on PC. I am a complete video editing noob, so if any of you have tips on how to use Vegas Pro or how to do editing in general, normally I use Share Factory on the PlayStation because it's fairly user-friendly, and I still find that difficult to wrap my head around. Aside from the few things that I can do on it, I know there's a lot more that I could do, but yeah, I'm a small channel, and I'm trying to get that subscriber count up to 1,000. So if you guys could help out with that, I know something like 80% of you watching this video aren't subscribed, or even higher, 85%. So if you enjoy the video, if you enjoy any of my content, and especially if you're a returning viewer, why not just hit the sub button? It's not much work for you to be doing that. I know you don't need to, because if you're already watching my videos, chances are YouTube is gonna, the algorithm is just gonna put my video in your feed, but there is a chance that you'll miss something along the way. So, and more importantly, I mean, yeah, selfishly, it would help me out a lot. That the views, the subs, the likes, the comments, all really help boost my channel in the algorithm. I think that I can get this channel well over 1,000 subs with the amount of time that I'm putting into the game and into the content for you guys, so I greatly appreciate it. But I'm not going to bore you to death with trying to sell myself here, so let's start talking about this dungeon. I've actually got written in front of me some key points, because this is an hour and a half of gameplay, and I didn't edit the gameplay. This is pretty much just the raw footage that I recorded in OBS of the run. So I had to make myself some talking points so that I actually have something to offer you guys throughout the video. So as far as the overview of the topics that I'll be going into, obviously I already stated I'm going to talk about the seasonal artifacts. We've got Chaos Reach, which has been buffed. I'll go over my arsenal, the different loadouts, and the artifact mods, and in depth about the build. But before I go into each and every one of those things, I want to mention the fact that there's quite a lot of unchanged mechanics regarding the dungeon and the enemies, and there's some unchanged aspects in the builds. So this dungeon, there's 3 encounters and there's some transition phases, and that means that you're going to be best suited to customizing each of your loadouts to each of the encounters, because dungeons and raids are designed that way. Every encounter is different. Even the transition periods, you might want to put on your stompies or your lion ramparts and have an eager-edged sword. So I'm going to be going over each one of those, but I think it's worth stating some of the things that are going to stay the same throughout the dungeon and what I'm not changing. So as far as the dungeon mechanics, basically we are disrupting the hive ritual. I mean, the first encounter is literally break the ritual. I think that's the name of the encounter, something like that. And we're trying to stop this ritual, and obviously we learn more about what's going on really as we progress through the dungeon. And every encounter basically involves some sort of disruption to the ongoing hive rituals. And we do so by matching symbols, memorizing symbols. We're going to be imbuing vestiges, or using the vestiges to imbue certain totems or temples or orbs, and we're going to have to do that in a timely manner. You're going to have to pay attention to the vestige timer on the left side of your screen whenever you acquire a vestige, and you will have to do the correct thing with that vestige or you will die. And if you run out of time, you will die. Some unchanged enemies throughout the dungeon. We've got moths. These moths are arc, so if you might want to consider arc resist, if not for all the wizards blasting you with arc, at least for the moths, because if 2 or 3 of them hit you, heck, even if 1 hits you at the wrong time, you can pretty much consider every moth to be a near-death encounter, if not death. And if you're on Arc Warlock like me, you can get some help in taking care of those moths automatically using your Arc Soul. Your Arc Soul will automatically delete those moths for the most part. There's going to be acolytes in every phase. There's going to be thrall in every phase, and both of those types of enemies, or grounded enemies, are very easy to take out with waveform grenade launchers, if you have the correct environment to, like if there's not a lot of objects that are going to be blocking your waveform, then it's a good dungeon to use a waveform, and almost I'm using it right here in the break the ritual encounter, but it even works on the stairs in Ecthar. So yeah, and a waveform is just going to instantly eliminate acolytes and thrall. There's also going to be boomer knights in every encounter, which are like the orange or yellow bar knights, and they have like an arc cannon, kind of like mini Alakools if you've done the light blade this week, or actually, since I'm recording this on reset day, last week if you did the light blade. The boss Alakool is basically a giant boomer knight. I don't know if he has a cannon. I think he just blasts you with arc straight from his hands. But either way, there's boomer knights, and they should be priority targets, because although they are not rushing you with their, they're not the sword knights. They're not rushing you to melee you. They are shooting you from afar, but their arc blast does big damage. So yeah, and then there's some unchanged aspects about the build in general. Okay, I'm on Stormcaller. I'm rocking Stormcaller for the entire dungeon. I'm using Arc Soul and Electrostatic Mind for my aspects throughout the entire dungeon. Healing Rift, Pulse Grenades, and Ball Lightning. my abilities stay the same. Spark of Shock, Spark of Resistance, and Spark of Feedback. I'm keeping those fragments on for the entire dungeon, and then I'm switching one of those. I'm switching my fourth fragment depending on the encounter. Spark of Shock is just kind of a staple arc fragment that you should pretty much use on almost every single arc build because it adds jolt to all of your arc grenades. So unless your arc grenades are automatically jolting targets, like I think from maybe Touch of Thunder, Titan lightning grenades, the only way you're going to jolt is by using Spark of Shock, and it's a -10 discipline penalty, but it's worth it. Spark of Resistance is going to basically give you surrounded resistance, so kind of like melee resistance, which is the mod that you can put on your chest piece, which gives you damage resistance versus targets that are nearby. Spark of Resistance is going to give you, I think, even more damage resistance than that, and that's while you are surrounded. It also gives you +10 strength, but that's kind of a non-factor. The main importance here is that it's free damage resistance, and you could definitely use it in this dungeon because this is basically a pinnacle power level dungeon, unlike all the other dungeons in the game, because it's new, it's featured this season, it's farmable. They're not going to make it super easy for you, and you're going to be spending quite a while trying to survive and trying to beat these bosses because of the level that it's at. And it'll get easier towards the end of the season when you start approaching like 1830, 1831 in power. Then you're pretty much at you're pretty much capped out on the amount of damage and DR that you get for this dungeon. So in the meantime, you're going to want to take advantage of some of those benefits. Spark of Feedback is another fragment that I'm using throughout the dungeon, and this is optional. If your stats are good enough where you can have tier 10 resilience, tier 10 recovery, then you could probably get away without using this, but I am honestly just using Spark of Feedback for the +10 resilience, because I need to, in order for my build to have tier 10 resil, tier 10 recovery with the stag pretty much all the time, I need to, with the armor that I have to either supplement through a recovery fragment or a resilience fragment. And so, yeah, I could use whatever fragment that is. I could use finishers to give myself +10 recovery from that fragment. But I chose to just use Spark of Feedback because, hey, why not? If I'm surrounded, I get punched by the knight at the end or thrall, then I decide to use a melee back, they're going to be taking additional damage for hitting me. Like, you hit me, I hit you harder. That's what Spark of Feedback does, but basically I'm just using it for the 10 resilience stat. I'm not using Spark of Ions, which is another staple fragment to use with many of the arc subclasses because it gives you ionic traces for killing jolted targets. However, on Stormcaller, if you're using Electrostatic Mind, you do not need to use a fragment slot to get ionic traces, because Electrostatic Mind is going to give you ionic traces with every jolted kill, every blinded kill. So when you kill targets that have been jolted, blinded, or if they've been killed straight up by your abilities, you're going to get ionic traces. So it's just free with the aspect. So yeah, I do believe that you could get even more ionic traces if you use Spark of Ions. There is an internal cooldown with Spark of Ions, and I think it's only on the fragment there's a cooldown. I don't think Electrostatic Mind has a cooldown, or if it does, it's not on the same cooldown timer as Spark of Ions. So Spark of Ions is like the dollar store version of Electrostatic Mind. So I would suggest just don't bother using it at all if you're on stormcaller. Use something else. So that's where so that my fourth and final fragment is basically freed up because I don't need to use Spark of Ions. And that means that I can use, for certain encounters, Spark of Beacons, or I can use Spark of Instinct, or whatever you want. Another unchanged part of the build is the stat distribution. Okay, I'm basically 100 resilience at all times. Not basically, I am. Tier 10 resilience is just always. And then my recovery and my discipline, I balance with the priority on recovery and then discipline. But ideally, I would like triple 100s. And so just get whatever you can get there. But because I'm leaning into a stag build for my Stormcaller for most of the dungeon, I tend to prioritize recovery over discipline because I just want more rifts. And then for mods that are unchanged for the entire dungeon, heavy ammo finder, I mean, you absolutely need heavy ammo, so why not put heavy ammo finder on? You're just going to get more heavy bricks. It's as simple as that. Harmonic Siphon, I'm pretty much always using an arc weapon as my ad killing bread and butter kind of weapon. So I can always rely on my arc weapons to give me orbs of power, which is important. Obviously, we need orbs of power with build crafting 2.0. Orbs of power is giving us armor charge and other benefits. So you always need to be producing orbs. Harmonic Reloader. Now, so keep in mind here, you could just use Arc Siphon and you could use Arc Reloader. Depends on the element of the weapons that you're using, but if they match your subclass, you could just use Harmonic, because Harmonic is a cheaper energy cost compared to a non-matching mod to your subclass, then it costs more. But with the seasonal artifact, we have discounted Arc mods, so you could use Harmonic Siphon and Harmonic Reloader, or you could just use Arc for like 1 energy instead of 3 because of the seasonal artifact. Bolstering Detonation, this is on at all times because I want my rift back as often as possible. So whenever I do tick damage with my grenades don't have to kill anything, it just has to damage targets. It gives me rift energy, I think, by the tick. So it's just a bonus. And then I'm using at least 1 times of harmonic resistance or arc resistance. I always have at least 1 copy on. And then bomber. I'm always using bomber because when I cast my rift, I get grenade energy. And then when I throw my grenade and damage an enemy, then I've got I get my rift back sooner. So it's the loop of grenade feeds rift, rift feeds grenade. So with all that said, now I actually have notes for the first encounter, even though the first encounter is long gone because this introduction has been taking a little bit longer than I thought. But I have a video up on my YouTube channel for the first encounter. It's like half an hour long because it's my first experience. I went in solo and blind on release day of the dungeon and figured out how to beat it, and I go over the mechanics there. But basically, you're breaking the ritual. You need to locate the ogre at the start. You kill the ogre. You follow the green miasma trail that the ogre leaves behind to a symbol site. You note the symbol. You kill the light bearer after the 3rd symbol location. Just whenever that light bearer pops up, that means you're done with that phase of the ritual. You do the finisher. You've got the vestige of light buff. Then you return to the site. You use your super on the wizard. The wizard is going to drop a deep site. You reveal the deep site, and then you imbue the correct matching vestige. So the 3 sites that you traveled to will all have the same symbol. That's the symbol that you need to dunk on. You need to imbue the vestige that matches that symbol. And you do that 4 times and you're done. And then you spend a good 10 minutes, 15 minutes or whatever in this transition period. Now, you'll notice that for the first encounter, I actually used my... I actually just used my stag loadout with Osteostriga and Forbearance. Actually, you know what? Let me, seeing as this is just a transition, I'll see if I can switch this over. Okay, so here is... See, I can't even navigate the menu on PC without a controller. But just to show you, Osteostriga, Forbearance, Terminus Ryzen. This is my transition loadout and first encounter loadout. And then for my 4th fragment that I had freed up, I use Spark of Beacons because I'm using Forbearance. And whenever I have Forbearance on, I'm using Spark of Beacons because Spark of Beacons it gives, look at, while you're amplified, your arc special weapon final blows create a blinding explosion. This is a free flashbang grenade with every single Forbearance shot. So I mean, as if Forbearance wasn't already good enough with the chain reaction. But yeah, when you synergize it with an arc subclass to create blinding explosions on top of that chain reaction, basically there's nothing left in the room standing that isn't dead or blinded. And blinding targets is going to give you ionic traces from Electrostatic Mind, right? Arc Surge mods, like, you don't need to go triple arc weapon surge for the first encounter and the transitions, so I may as well just get some healing off those orbs because it would suck to die if you know, on a basic counter or transition when you're traversing between encounters. Trying to figure out, there it is, there's the new build screen there. So if you want to note my build for the first encounter and transition or traversing sections, this is what I'm using. Although for the traversal sections, you'll notice I switched from Osteostriga to Wishender. So Osteostriga is done, and one sec. My dog doesn't like that the door is closed. Seasonal artifact mods, which I said I was going to go over, so here you go. Shock, I'm using all the seasonal artifact mods that benefit Arc. Shock and Awe, Arc final blows while you're amplified, summon a burst of lightning that damages and jolts targets. This is like including your arc weapons, not just your abilities. Your arc weapons are going to create jolting explosions. Like this is completely nuts, which means more ionic traces all the time. Lightning strikes twice, I get more grenade energy. Pretty simple. Electric armor, it was misnamed for a while. These two names were swapped, so I just noticed they fixed this. But amped up, so you're going to be amplified for like 20 seconds instead of what it was. Electric armor is huge. I don't know how much damage resistance it is, but it is noticeable. If you're on Arc, you're going to have better survivability for this dungeon than most of the other subclasses, except for maybe like Woven Mail. But I would say this is still even better. Thunderous Retort, this is massive. Okay, this is going to increase our damage for against these bosses big time. You just have to be amplified or critically wounded, but I mean, you don't want to rely on getting critically wounded in order to try and make use of Thunderous Retort. Just consider getting amplified and then casting your super. If you're not amplified, don't cast your super unless it's absolutely necessary, but I'll talk more about that. So now I'm actually on Ecthar, so I should probably Well, you know what? Let's do a live. I'll just do a live commentary on the gameplay here, so that you can kind of get familiar with how the encounter works. So obviously, you rally up, you kill the thrall, or the acolytes, and then the boss is gonna emerge from the pool in the middle. You got to go and kill the 3 knights that are hanging around the parapet on top of the stairs. Once you kill those 3 orange bar knights, an ogre is going to spawn top middle, and you need to kill the ogre. And then the deep sight reveal shows up where the boss emerged from in that pool in the middle. You go and reveal the deep sight. It's going to show you 3 symbols on either side of you, left or right. There's like these metal, like medallion, rusty, cast iron looking pieces of metal hanging on chains on top of the walls to the left and the right. It doesn't matter what order those medallions are, or they look like frying pans, but it doesn't matter. There's going to be 3 symbols that just appear wherever, anywhere on those in that section. Like, they could all be on the left, they could all be on the right, or they'll be spread out. All you have to know is what those symbols are. Once you know what the symbols are, you go down into the water, and you have to find those symbols, and you have to collect them using the interact button. And then you need to bring those symbols back up, and kill the wizards that have just spawned. So, like, I just went and got all the symbols. And that means that for each symbol that you get underwater, a light bearer wizard is going to spawn. So if you get 3 symbols, when you come up, you're going to have 3 wizards to kill. When you kill 1 wizard, you're going to get the vestige of light buff, as you can see on the left side of my screen there. I have it for 1:16. It just means I have to dunk it at any one of those totems. There's 3 totems along the parapet. It doesn't matter which totem I'm dunking it in, it just has to be any one. There's no order to it. Your symbol work, your memorization work is done. Once you got those 3 symbols, it doesn't matter. You don't have to remember them anymore. You just have to kill the wizards and light up all 3 of those totems, and then damage begins. So this is my final. I always do my final dunk in the same totem because it is the easiest spot to transition to the middle here. And so that knight spawns right in the middle, like where your rally banner is. You have to kill that knight ASAP because damage has begun for 45 seconds. And that's all the time that you get. So you need to nuke that knight, and then you need to pick up the green buff off the floor that the knight drops. That is the buff that is going to allow you to damage Ecthar. So you need to get it ASAP. And then, for me, I'm not using geomag stabilizers. You'll notice that, like, the first thing I do after nuking the knight is I cast my super. My super is going to melt the boss's shield. And then I can obviously I nuke the knight, and then I cast my rift. Okay, there's actually there's a bit more nuance to it than that. So yeah, there's a few things that I need to do even before I dunk the last symbol. I need to make sure that I'm freshly amplified. And I need to make sure that I have 4 stacks of fresh armor charge. So, like, ideally, when I'm dunking that last symbol, I'm 4 armor charge and full timer of amplified. Then I beeline to that knight in the middle. I throw my grenade on the way. That way my grenade starts recharging right away. That grenade is going to help me nuke the knight. Don't be afraid to use Lament on the knight. You need to just kill it ASAP. You have plenty of Lament ammo to use versus the boss, even if you use some on the knight. That's why you'll see I even use my Lament on the wizards, because I'm making plenty of heavy ammo, partially because I'm using double special ammo. But yeah, you got plenty. So just use your grenade, use Lament, get that knight dead. Then, right as I'm finishing the kill on the knight, I cast my rift right away. That way my rift can start recharging right away as well, because I'm going to be able to have 2 rifts, 2 stag rifts for the entire fight against Ecthar if it's done correctly. Once I cast my rift, then I super, because now the boss is going to be rushing me. So I can cast my super while he's rushing, melt his shield off. I make sure I back up a little bit away from the rally banner, like just back up 5-10 feet at most, 5 feet minimum, and you'll be fine. Because if you don't back up, the boss is going to get to you while you're still in your chaos reach, and he's going to melee you and send you flying back, and he's going to throw off your super aim. He may even be able to suppress you out of your super. I'm not 100% sure about that, but he'll definitely bash you. But if you just back up just a little bit, you'll avoid the bash, and then you'll be, once you're done your super, then you can start going straight into your lament combos. So you can just go straight back to your rift. He's probably standing right in your rift for your lament combos to do optimal DPS. I would recommend doing 4 to 5 light revved light attacks, and then so obviously, like with lament, if you don't know how to use lament very well, you need to block first to get your banshees well revved up. Then you do 4 or 5 light and 1 heavy, and then it resets your banshees wail. So you need to do 2 uncharged attacks while your sword charge charges back up, and then once you have enough sword energy charged back up, you can go into a 2-1-2 combo for the rest of the damage phase. The reason why you don't need to do 2-1-2 from the start is because you actually have full sword energy at the beginning, so it means that you can do 4 or 5 and then 1 and then 2 and 2-1-2 and 2-1-2. So yeah, you could get a little bit more damage that way, and you'll see at my level at 1823, I could have 4-phased Ecthar with lament, but I'm very look, I'm halfway. There's 2 phases, and I'm pretty much right at the halfway point. So if I didn't miss a single tick of my super, or if I didn't mess up, if I hit literally every single swing on my sword and timed my grenade perfectly and all that stuff, then it would have been a 4-phase. But I honestly wasn't expecting it to be a 4-phase. But at 18, if I was 1824, I would say it would be an easy 4-phase. Every power level that you get, it gives you a noticeable difference in this dungeon. That's why getting to 1831 is going to make your time much easier in this dungeon than doing it sub 1820. If you're 1815, going in to do the boss fight is going to feel like a grandmaster almost. So yeah. Yeah, and then while I'm doing my lament combos, I'm obviously just making sure that I'm keeping an eye on my grenade, because the next ability that's going to be back, while I'm in my lament combos, is going to be my grenade. As soon as I have that grenade, throw it so that I get bolstering detonation procced, so that I can get another rift down. Because there's going to be a period of time where I'm not in my rift, and I'm going to need my rift, because there's a good chance that not only the boss, but all the boomer knights and everything will start closing in on you with other enemies, and lament can't be healing you the entire time, but if you didn't know that, lament also heals you while you're doing your attacks. But yeah, the idea is throw that second grenade out so that you can damage Ecthar, so that you can get another rift up. And don't be so committed to damage versus Ecthar where you just decide not to place your rift because you're hung up on doing damage. It's worth it to just put a rift down, because this fight takes long enough. You don't want to die just because you decided not to put your rift down because you wanted to do one more Banshee's Wail heavy attack, you know, yeah, it's not worth it. And like I said, even if you're 1824 or higher, I would say it's an easy 4 phase. So what are some other notes that I have here about Ecthar? Another note about Forbearance here, as I already mentioned, like in the previous encounter, I was using Spark of Beacons. Yeah, I'm still using Spark of Beacons here, and in fact, let me switch over to my build. This is the build right here. Yeah. So Spark of Beacons was my 4th fragment slot. Yeah, I don't have it in order here, but yeah, if I'm not using Spark of Beacons, then I'm using Spark of Instinct, basically. And if I'm using Forbearance, I'm using Spark of Beacons. So one thing to note here is that while I have 70 discipline, I actually have tier 10. This is 100 discipline because I have armor charge all the time, and I'm using Font of Focus, which gives you 30 stat points while you're charged with armor. So I use this quite a bit throughout the entire dungeon. Why is this the wrong loadout? Okay, this is the correct loadout for Ecthar. But yeah, Font of Focus. Like I said, I'm using at least 1 copy of Arc Resistance at all times. Same goes for Ecthar. I don't really feel the need to use like Concussive Dampener and double Arc Resist, even though it is a good choice. I do that for Simmumah. But if you're using the Stag the entire time and you're reliably casting your rifts and everything, like, you'll be fine. Especially if you can have 2 rifts down for the damage phase versus Ecthar, you'll be fine. You don't need all that extra damage resistance. Plus, you also have electric armor from the seasonal artifact. So charged up is going to give me 4 stacks of armor charge instead of 3. And Lucent Blades is going to increase my sword energy regeneration, which essentially optimizes my damage because it means that I'm going to be more consistent with my Lament combos, like that 2-1-2 combo that I'm speaking about. If you don't have Lucent Blades on, then your 2-1-2 combo is going to eventually get interrupted, and you're going to lose Banshee's Wail, and your combo is going to be messed up because of that. So if you're not using Lucent Blades, then I think you may want to even do a different combination, and I can't tell you what would be optimal, but it'd probably be like a 3-1-2 or 3-1-3 or something. But if you want to reliably do your 2-1-2, I think you need Lucent Blades. I notice a big difference, way more consistent. Triple Solar Weapon Surge. Absolutely, I mean, 22% extra weapon damage on Lament is huge. That's like a whole quarter of the boss's health extra damage. So if you don't want to use this and you want to use some survivability stuff from your orbs instead, you could do that, but you're going to do an extra phase. Powerful attraction here, mainly just because I didn't have enough room to do double time dilation, but you definitely... I use time dilation most of the time because that turns your 10 seconds of armor charge into 15 seconds. So now consider that I have 4 stacks of armor charge. That means that I have a solid minute. I have 60 seconds of armor charge. And because Ecthar is a 45, or no, I think it's about a 45 or 47 second damage window. So you could get away with 3 stacks of armor charge, but you would have to pick up your last orb right as you begin the encounter. Like, it would have to be exact. So this is just more forgiving. If you have 4 stacks of armor charge at 15 seconds each, that's 60 seconds. That gives you some time to collect your orb, get to the totem, imbue the vestige, and then get cracking on damage, and you'll have 22% more damage for the entire phase. Powerful attraction, like I said, it's mainly because I didn't have room for double time dilation. However, if I was using double time dilation, I would have swapped this out for concussive dampener probably, because 3 stacks of double time dilation is, you get about 18 seconds per armor charge with 2 stacks of time dilation, or 2 copies. So that means that I would get almost a minute from 3 armor charge and 2 time dilation. So, but powerful attraction is good. It's just every time I cast my rift, then I'm going to collect all the orbs of power that are nearby, which is nice, but it's like, this is a fairly close quarter boss fight, and it's just super easy to pick up orbs, as long as you consider that the orbs of power are actually rolling away from you a lot of the time, and they'll be stuck in corners. So sometimes it could be a bit of an issue, but not nearly as bad as at the final boss fight. Not to the point where you absolutely need powerful attraction. I think this powerful attraction really shines on like Hunter, where you can dodge frequently, and you can just kind of like, especially on Night Stalker. But yeah. Anyway, so let me switch back here. Okay, so one point that I didn't mention here is, consider that a lot of you may be hesitant to go with like triple weapon surge mods because you're giving up like recuperation, or better already, pick up an orb of power, you get healing. That's so good, right? Well, it is good, but you can make up for that. So my forbearance, actually, you know what? Let me show you, because I think this is pretty important. Okay, so I know Ambitious Assassin is like the meta choice for forbearance, because you can fire out 2 grenades at once. Like your magazine can get overflowed based on rapid kills. But I like the consistency of just 1 grenade in the mag at a time. And I greatly prefer having Unrelenting on this thing with chain reaction, because pretty much every kill is going to be a multi-kill, which means that every single shot is going to heal me from forbearance. So like you'll notice in this encounter, I'm not even panicked. I get critical so many times, I just have to shoot forbearance. There's always enemies, which means that I can always heal. So I'm like not even worried. I don't even have to cast my rift all that much, because forbearance is doing that much healing work for me. So it's absolutely amazing for that. And then couple that with Spark of Beacons, like I was saying, and everything that's not dead from chain reaction is going to be blind, and that means that those blinded enemies aren't going to be, they're neutralized. They're a non-threat. So here you can see I just have a sliver of health left on Ecthar. One thing I also didn't mention, Riptide here. Riptide is just a classic fusion rifle for just nuking like orange bars, like the knights and the ogres. It's really good for that, especially with chill clip. I don't even have like I don't play much Crucible at all. Haven't played it in a few seasons, but I think my clanmates probably earned me a Riptide through Hawthorne somehow, and so I'll take it. But I do have a Deliverance as well. It's just Riptide is a rapid fire frame, so it does more DPS, and it's just quicker. It just feels way better to use Riptide. 2 shots from the top half of the mag freeze the target, and once they're frozen, like you could just, your Arc Soul can just shatter them and finish them off easily, or a shot from Forbearance, and then you're done. So yeah, I pretty much went over everything that I could think of as far as tips and tricks for Ecthar, for using Lament. Now, Arbalist is a thing for this dungeon, which you probably know. Like, if you're doing this in a fire team, somebody should just always have Arbalist on, because it one-shots the boss's shields, which is kind of seems a bit cheesy to me, because there's no alternative to nuking the boss's shield other than one single shot from Arbalist. So it kind of feels like a bug, and which makes it kind of feel like an exploit. But who knows, maybe this was Bungie's intention to help us out of our misery when this dungeon dropped, because it was actually quite hard, especially for solo players. For solo players, this is longer than a raid in some cases. So yeah, if you can fit Arbalist into your loadout as a solo player, then obviously that's going to be a really good way to go. But if you're using Lament, then it's kind of hard to do anything about that, unless you use some other exploits or glitches or like micro nuances about the game. Like, there's a thing with bipod rockets where you can use like a legendary rocket launcher like Apex Predator or Cold Comfort from this dungeon with bipod, and that is going to give you like an overflowed amount of rockets, albeit those rockets do less damage. But the point is, it gives you more rockets than you can get otherwise. So that means that when you swap your loadout to, say, an exotic heavy weapon, you're going to have like max ammo. So yeah, it's a thing for kind of speed running the dungeon and optimizing damage. Yeah. So for this traversal part, the part that I'm on right now is actually kind of the hardest, most critical part, because once you move up to this second platform, the wizards respawn, and they're just kind of surrounding you. So just make sure before you move over to this podium here that you have a rift ready so that you can tank the wizard's damage while you one-shot them with Wish Ender, which, by the way, that's why I use Wish Ender in this dungeon for like pretty much all the traversal sections, because it one-shots the wizards through their shields. And also, all these Boomer Knights put up their shield. Like, if you damage them too much, they're gonna put up a shield and they're gonna heal, while Wish Ender could just shoot straight through that shield. So it's, yeah, really good for the traversal sections. You could also use, like, I'm using Terminus Ryzen here, which is the dungeon weapon from Spire the Watcher, which is an okay machine gun. It's no Commemoration like from Deepstone Crypt. Like, Commemoration is just by far, as a controller player, I think it's the best. It is the best machine gun in the game, because it's so stable. It has no recoil. Like, you can literally headshot anything and just hold the trigger down and consistently headshot targets from far away. So it's just insane for that. But Terminus Horizon, you would think for being a dungeon weapon that it would be a bit better, but the recoil on it is a little bit unsavory, but it still does the job. And like, for this one, I'm using triple tap and target lock so that I can kind of nuke yellow bars and stuff like I did for the first encounter and the traversal parts. But most of the time when I'm using this machine gun, it's because I'm using it for ad clear, and in that case I'm using Demolitionist and Volt Shot on it, which is a role that I got lucky enough to get. which is really good, but that's not the purpose of the machine gun for this dungeon. It's basically for single target damage, so target lock and triple tap is just going to be better. But if you wanted, you could just rely on Wish Ender, and you could use an Eager Edge sword and get around the map a little bit quicker. You can even use your sword for damage, but this is just the way that I ended up doing it. When I first did the dungeon, I was using my sword all over the place in traversals, but I just realized that there's like hardly any space or any time or any place to really Eager Edge, because either you're underwater or you're dealing with enemies. So yeah, the traversals themselves are like mini encounters. They can actually get fairly intense. So now we are finally here at Simmumah. And I guess I'll do a kind of a live commentary as we get to the first damage phase here, before going over any of my key points that I have written down. I'll just kind of like do it on the fly. So once you rally up, then you go and finish the ghost over at Oryx's ribcage or his heart. So yes, this is Oryx at the bottom of Titan. Pretty cool concept. The wizard boss is leading a resurrection type ritual. Yeah, they're trying to resurrect Oryx, which is pretty insane. And this concept is just really, really appealing. I think it's super cool. I haven't done many of the raids in Destiny 2 because when I played D1, I didn't do raids, and I only got back into D2 when Witch Queen released. So I've pretty much done the raids, and most of the content that I've played in this game is Witch Queen and later. So Val the Disciple, King's Fall, but King's Fall, I absolutely loved King's Fall. I loved the Oryx checkpoint, just big giant boss, super cool. So I don't know, just running into him in this dungeon, even though he's dead at the bottom of Titan, and it's very mysterious and everything, is just a very cool concept. But basically what we're doing is we're trying to stop the resurrection, and so we need to apply the same mechanics that we've learned since the beginning of the dungeon, which is imbuing vestiges, etc., remembering some symbols. This time we're remembering symbols for different reasons in different orders, but I'll go over that. But once you rally, the first thing you need to do is you need to locate the 3 Boomer Knights, because they're a threat, not because you need to for any mechanical reason, but you should just immediately get rid of them. Know where they're at. One spawns near the entrance to the encounter. Another one spawns up by Oryx's head at the top, and another one spawns down by the room that I just went in here, the night room. Just circle the map, find those 3 knights, nuke them. It's going to make your survivability a lot greater for the rest of the encounter until you do damage, and basically you have to rinse and repeat everything. So those Boomer Knights will come back at the end of each damage phase. So you do the same thing every time. Kill the 3 knights, and then you need to go and reveal the deep sight in the middle of the map. It's usually in the middle of the map, but sometimes it could be random. So you just find the deep sight, reveal it. It's going to show you where the triangle is that you need to focus on. Right, so Oryx has like 5 or 6 body parts that are sticking out of the sand, and so the triangle that the Hive are focused on for the ritual and resurrecting them, they're focused on 3 body parts at a time basically, and the heart is always at the center. The heart is always part of the triangle. So the other 2 points are going to be random for each phase of damage. So once you reveal that deep sight, it shows you where the green triangle is. So that means that you need to go to one of those 2 points, not the heart first. You need to go to one of the points that is not the heart. Stand in the circle at the body part. There's going to be like a green circle that kind of shows up on the ground around the body part, which lets you know that you're inside the circle. which lets you know that there's a mechanic that you could do while you're standing in the circle. And that mechanic is going to be killing Vorlog, the knight. He's going to be a different knight. He's not the orange bar boomer knights. He is a yellow bar. He's kind of glowing white, and he's got a big ass sword, and he's coming after you. So you just stand in the circle, and unless he, pulls an unstoppable champion dumb move where he gets stuck somewhere on the map, because that does happen. So if you can't find Vorlog, like if you're just sitting around waiting, he's not coming, it's probably because he got stuck up on some object, like typically up by Oryx's head somewhere. Like he tends to get glitched on the map and he doesn't know how to get down from there. So you can kind of just go shove him off or bait him off or whatever. But basically you want to stand in the circle, kill Vorlog. Once you kill Vorlog, while standing in the circle, he does not have to be in the circle, right? He could be anywhere. You just need to be in the circle when you kill him. That's going to finish that mechanic for you, and then you're going to see a green circle up in the air and a green hive symbol. And you need to line those up and look through the crosshairs, kind of like in the Witch Queen campaign. There was a few missions in the Witch Queen campaign where you had to kind of line up the W for the Witch Queen symbol just by lining your crosshair, just by like visually lining your crosshairs up with the symbol to make it complete. So that's like you're basically aligning the circle and the hive symbol. That's all you need to do. And the way you do that is usually you have to travel to the opposite circle or the opposite body part and look back towards the body part that you just came from, that you killed Vorlog at, and you line them up that way. Once you line them up, then you go to the next circle. Once you line them up, that's going to reveal a symbol above that body part. So you need to do this for all 3 points. You could do the heart second if you want, but you just can't do the heart first for whatever reason, because the boss is like, usually she's up above the heart to begin each phase. So it doesn't, you can't kill Vorlog at the heart for the first set of the triangle. I mean, you can, but you're not going to get the green circle and the green hive symbol to show up. So it'll just be for nothing. Then you'll have to wait for Vorlog to respawn. So just go to one of the other 2 points first, and then you can go to the heart or the other point. There's no order. It doesn't matter. Just not the heart first. So here we go. Now I'm actually in my first damage phase, but I'm a little behind on explaining the actual mechanics here. So I'm going to continue explaining the mechanics, and I'll go over the next damage phase, how I was doing it effectively. So once you've killed Vorlog at all 3 points and revealed all 3 symbols, then you need to go to each one of the light bearer rooms where you just familiarize yourself. The knight is always in the far room. The hunter is always on, or the acolyte I should say, is always in the top room, and the wizard is always in the closest room to the entrance of the encounter. And so when you go into each one of these rooms, you need to note the symbol that is up above, or that's up there in the room, because that symbol is going to let you know what body part to go and dunk the vestige on, right? So say I go into the wizard room and it's 3 dot. I'm calling it 3 dot. There's 3 dots. You probably know the symbol I'm talking about. And so I kill the wizard. I finish the wizard, and now I've got vestige of a wizard. So I need to go back to the main room, and I need to deposit vestige of a wizard on the matching symbol. So say 3 dot is over Oryx's knee. That's where I need to dunk vestige of a wizard. And as you come out of the room with that vestige, you need to reveal the deep sight again before you can actually dunk it. And the deep sight spawns in different locations. So it's actually good to note before you go into before you go into the light bearer room, just note where is the deep sight. Okay, like I don't do this all the time in this run here because I'm not 100% optimized. Like this is my first solo flawless run, so obviously I'm not like super proficient at the dungeon, but you learn all these things as you do it. Like, okay, as I come out of the light bearer room with the vestige, I'm on a timer, and now I gotta try and find the deep sight. And so you waste time finding the deep sight, where instead you could just note where the deep sight is before you go into the light bearer room. That way you know when you come out of the light bearer room where to go immediately. And it also lets you know what might be the best exit for you to take from the light bearer room, because there's actually 2 exits and entrances to each one of the light bearer rooms. So like, say this is Oryx's right arm or his knee, and I'm coming out of the hunter room. Well, I'm probably going to want to go out of the right side of the hunter room, so that I'll be next to that point, or where the deep sight is. If I know the deep sight is near that spot, then that's where I'm going to go. So you just need to do that for every single point. Obviously there's 3 points in the triangle, there's 3 light bearer rooms, there's 3 light bearers. That means you're going to collect three types of vestiges. Just once you come back with that vestige, reveal that deep sight and dunk the vestige on the black orb of the matching symbol. Once you've done that for all 3 points in the triangle, then damage phase begins right then and there. And so that's where I have my damage strategy. And that's also kind of a major important part of this fight, is I'm actually doing this in 4 phases. So it might look right now with the damage that I did on the first damage phase that this would be like a 5 phase, because I didn't quite do a quarter. At least visually it doesn't appear like I did a quarter. So but I didn't do a perfect damage phase on the first one. But it is actually a pretty forgiving at 1823 power. It is pretty forgiving and easy to do a 4 phase with the strategy that I'm using here and the 2 builds that I'm using. So let's see, I'll go over these builds here, because there's like, it takes like 7-8 minutes for every single setup. And then each damage phase, from the moment that you finish the last light bearer and collect the vestige of that light bearer to the end of the damage phase, it's about 1.5 minutes. And then you spend another 7-8 minutes setting up the triangle. Which means that at nearly 10 minutes per damage phase, you could be spending a long ass time on this boss fight. Like, if you're not doing optimized damage, then be prepared to be here for like an hour or more. No joke. Yeah. If you don't do a swap loadout, right? I'm actually hot swapping here, and I have a little bit of an issue with hot swapping loadouts. Not just like skillfully, like, and technologically, because I'm on controller, I'm not on mouse and keyboard, and it's a lot faster to swap loadouts on mouse and keyboard. But I have other issues with it. But I'm not gonna. I won't talk so much about that unless I get plenty of time. But basically, all I'm saying is, if you do not do this encounter with a maximum damage build and loadout, then you're going to be doing more phases, and every phase is 10 minutes. So, like 4 phases if you're doing good damage solo. I think you could probably do 3 if you're 1831 fairly easily. Like, even for me, I could probably do a solo 3 phase near the end of the season. But at the power that I'm at right now, 4 phase is good, and it's fairly easy. That's like 40 minutes. That's a long time to be spending doing a boss fight with all of the different issues with survivability, and who else knows what can go wrong. Maybe your internet stops working, maybe you get disconnected, maybe Bungie servers fail. Like, the longer you spend in this boss fight, the greater your chances are of your solo flawless being ruined, not just by you, and not just by making a mistake, you in the game, but like other factors. And it is kind of grueling how long you have to spend doing this boss fight if you're not doing the maximum damage. So I'm going to recommend that you do 2 different loadouts here, because you can't just rock a full damage loadout either, because the 8 or 9 minutes that you're spending setting up your triangle, you're going to be struggling to survive, like big time. Like, the boss is going to be blasting you with arc the whole time, which does a lot of damage, and she spawns like a rainbow of moths, like 6-7 moths at a time, every time you kill Vorlog. So yeah, so every time you set up one point in the triangle, I think except for the last one, she spawns a wave of moths, and these are not normal moths, because the normal moths will seek out enemies to overshield first before they decide to come and attack you. The moths only attack you if there's no enemies for them to go and attach to give an overshield. It's like a mini overshield, but you know what I'm talking about. But the moths that the moths that the boss spawn are just aggressive moths. Like, they're not on a mission to help the enemies. They're on a mission to just go and instantly kill you. And if you're doing this solo for the first time, you will experience that 100%, because you would just not know. You're just not going to know what hit you. Like, you're going to start the encounter, and then about 10-15 seconds in, you're going to be dead, and you're going to be scratching your head wondering what the hell just happened. But yeah, it's that arc of moths that she spawns. So every time at the beginning of the encounter, right at the get-go, just expect that wave of moths, right? It's going to get you in about 10 seconds. She spawns them like pretty much right away. Along with all the other enemies spawning, she does that wave of moths. And then after that, every time you kill Vorlog, you're going to get another wave. So just look at the boss whenever you kill Vorlog. Or I think it actually might be after you kill Vorlog and when you do the symbol alignment. I'm not sure on the timing on that. But just be weary every time you kill Vorlog, and certainly by the time that you align the symbols, like the circle and the hive symbol, you're going to get a wave of moths. So just look at the boss. She'll throw them up right for you to just shoot out of the air right there. That's the best way that you can take care of them, is just as soon as they spawn. Otherwise, you better make sure that you have a rift ready to put down so that your Arc Soul can help out. And you can actually tank. You could tank like 3 moth hits in a stag rift. Yeah, so if you don't have rift energy when the boss does her moth spawn, then just run around until or go in the water or something until you got your rift back, because you will die to those moths. They are not normal moths. So look, I was like barely at a quarter on the first damage phase, and then after the second damage phase, I'm already at half. That means that I did more than a quarter on my second damage phase. And I probably still missed a few ticks of my Chaos Reach, and I probably still missed like a few of my 3 burst shots of Storm Chaser. So yeah, I could have even done more damage than that. But anyways, I better go over these builds before this dungeon ends. So the stag loadout that I'm using here is my survivability build. I'm using that most of the time while I'm setting up the triangle. Let me see if I can switch over here. Okay. So this is my survivability loadout. Now, I need to use special ammo in this slot. Okay, so a blinding GL is a good way to go because it saves a lot of ammo, and a blinding GL is just good in general. Disorienting grenades. They renamed it. It's blinding, but you know, it neutralizes the enemies. So if you get overwhelmed when you come out of the water from the light bearer room, whenever you need to use this, don't be afraid. Just shoot packs of enemies, shoot the boomer knights, shoot Vorlog. This is just going to neutralize them, and that is going to give you time to either get away and heal or kill them without worrying about being shot. It's just, you know, it's just a good way to survive the fight. I use disorienting grenades on like pretty much most like unknown content as well, just because it's so useful to have, you know, like 21 shots. You'll never run out of ammo if you just use it tactically. Then I'm using Risk Runner. Okay, and by the way, for my optional fragment here, Spark of Instinct, right? I'm not using Spark of Beacons because I'm not using Arc Special Weapons in this encounter. Like, my Forbearance is not very useful in this encounter because it's a big open space. The enemies spread out a lot. So it means I'm not going to be proccing Chain Reaction as often, which means I might not be proccing Unrelenting as often. And also, I can't shoot moths out of the air with Forbearance. So, yeah, it's just better to not go with a waveform here. So I don't need Spark of Beacons. But Spark of Instinct is actually, if you remember Reactive Pulse, before Buildcraft in 2.0, it was a combat mod that you would, when you were charged with light, I think if your shields got broken while you were being melee damaged by enemies or something like that, it would release an arc shockwave that would damage the targets near you. So they got rid of that mod with the new mod system, and they added this new arc mod called Spark of Instinct. It is basically Reactive Pulse, but better, and it only benefits arc builds, obviously. So it's not as universal anymore, but you can use it on any arc subclass. And this is actually clutch because when you're trying to damage the boss, a lot of the times you will get mobbed by Thrall or Acolytes or whatever. Mostly the Thrall. They just kind of spawn at random times. And Spark of Instinct is going to like automatically take care of them for you anytime you get critically wounded. It's probably on a cooldown that I'm not aware of. But and you're not going to notice really when it happens, but if you're not paying attention and you're like all of a sudden getting hit by Thrall, and then all of a sudden you're not getting hit by Thrall, it's probably because Spark of Instinct procced and all those Thrall got jolted automatically. Like, so clue into it, because if you use it and you're not even paying attention, you might hear that jolt go off, and then all of a sudden you're fine. And where did all the enemies go? Well, they're all dead because Spark of Instinct. This is actually clutch, not just for survivability and being rushed by targets, so like Vorlog. It can help there as well. If he gets you critical, then jolt him automatically. But it's definitely going to help you at the boss, because you need to keep that aim going. Like, especially if you're not using a rocket launcher with tracking and you're using a linear fusion rifle like I am here, and you need to, like, Thrall are going to make you flinch all over the place. So if you can get Spark of Instinct to go off automatically, then you're just automatically going to have better aim, because you're not going to be getting flinched by Thrall. Not only that, but it jolts the targets, right? So that means it's feeding, excuse me, electrostatic mind, right? Which is going to give me ionic traces, which is going to make me amplified, which is going to give me electric armor, which is going to give me ability energy back faster, which means I can throw another grenade back faster, which means that bolstering detonation is going to proc faster, and I'm going to get another rift down faster. So I recommend it. It's very good. You could go with anything you want really here. Like, I considered using Spark of Recharge because that would give me more melee and grenade energy. But yeah, so for my survivability build, Risk Runner is the other important thing here, right? So Risk Runner is actually huge with Arc Conductor. When taking arc damage, this weapon becomes more powerful and resists incoming arc damage. Kills extend the time in this overcharged state. So this is like, I think it's like a 3 or 4 second timer normally while you're overcharged. And it gives you like a kind of like an overshield that you can't really see, but if you go and reveal the deep sight while you have Arc Conductor active, you'll see you have like a bubble around you. Unless that's like a bubble from electric armor or amplified, I'm not sure. But basically, you're going to be a walking stag. So when you're not in a stag rift getting damage resistance, which is like 25% damage resistance, and you get more rift energy with the stag, while you're on the run, you're going to have Risk Runner, which is like, I don't know how much damage resistance it gives you, but it is a lot. It is the matter of life and death. So if you can afford to use Risk Runner here, well, I think the question is, can you afford not to use Risk Runner here? Like if you're like an average player, I would say, you know, there's a good chance you can't afford to not use it here. And this is like one of the first exotic weapons that you get in the game, even as a free-to-play player, so use it. Yeah, I would say even if you don't want to do a swap loadout, I would just say use Risk Runner. If you're in a fire team and somebody's using Arbalest, you should use Risk Runner. Even if you're not on Arc, because that arc damage resistance is key, because the moths are all arc damage, the boomer knights are arc damage, the wizard, the boss is arc damage, right? The boss does a lot of damage. Like if you're like directly under her revealing a deep sight while she's blasting you, you're gonna be dead before you're done revealing the deep sight. So if you have Arc Conductor active, you can get away with revealing deep sight under the boss, even without a rift. But you'll see, like, a lot of the times I put my rift down while I reveal the deep sight. That's actually pretty key. But anyways, what else about the survivability build? I can't use Font of Focus because this is absolutely important. You can't use decaying armor charge mods. Font of Focus, if I have that on, when I have armor charge, it's going to set my armor charge to a timer and decay over time. Which is not good, because I need to, on this build, during my survivability phases, I need to go and collect armor charge, and I need to hang on to it. So that's why I'm also not using any Arc Weapon Surge mods here, because those will also decay my armor charge. So instead, I can just go with survivability with recuperation and better already, and elemental charge, so that when I pick up ionic traces, I'll get armor charge every now and then, on top of picking up the orbs of power. I don't need time dilation on this build either, because I don't need to extend the time on armor charge, because I'm not using any decaying armor charge mods. But you do need to use one armor charge mod on this build, otherwise armor charge will have no function. And so that means if armor charge has no function, when you pick up an orb of power or collect an ionic trace, you are not going to get any armor charge. You will get nothing. So you need a function for armor charge, which in this case is Healthy Finisher, right? So Healthy Finisher consumes one stack of armor charge to replenish my health on finishers. I don't even care about that. I'm not using it for that. I'm only using it to give armor charge a function. So that means that when I get to when I'm done with all the mechanics and everything, and I'm about to start damage phase, I'll have 3 stacks of armor charge just sitting there, not doing anything because I'm not using finishers. And then I can swap to this loadout. And one important thing when swapping, try and do this either during an animation, like revealing the deep sight or casting your rift. That's when you want to do your hot swap. Like I did it on controller. I did not do this on PC because I wanted to use mouse and keyboard to hot swap. I actually just did this on PC, even though I hardly ever play on PC. Like maybe 5% of my Destiny gaming time is on PC. Yeah, I was still using controller because that's what I'm familiar with. And this is as fast as you can go with a controller to move your cursor. Okay, it's not. Let's see if I can even put my mouse here. Well, I can't get the mouse back up now. But anyways, with a mouse, you can just instantly go over to whatever you want in hot swap. So I've learned after doing this dungeon for several runs and hours, etc., trying to solo flawless this fight, practice time on this fight. The time that you want to swap loadouts is when you go to do damage. It's not when you go reveal the last deep sight. I've prioritized trying to reveal the deep sight with my class ability intact so that I can go to my damage phase location with a rift. Okay, so this might sound unsafe because revealing that final deep sight, like oftentimes if you're on Arc Warlock or any Warlock, like it's intuitive to cast your rift on the deep sight so that you'll be safe while you're revealing the deep sight. This is a good strategy, but if you can get Arc Conductor going on Risk Runner, then you can kind of get away with revealing that deep sight at the right time, and then you can go over to your damage location. And for me, I always do damage. I always do damage at the rib cage, at Oryx's heart, because his rib cage actually offers a bit of cover, and I've learned through trial and error that the boss teleports far less. She is far less sporadic anyways with her teleportation. If she does teleport while you're doing damage from the ribcage, she won't move very far. If you're somewhere else on the map, she can teleport like all over the place. Like it's hard to find her. If you do damage from in the ribcage, she'll pretty much always be in your line of sight. Even if she teleports, she'll only move over like a few feet. So for consistency's sake, I always do damage at the heart, which means that when I'm going to do my Lightbearer symbols, I don't pick up the symbol for the heart, right? I always save that for last. But yeah, so if you get Arc Conductor going when you reveal that deep sight, then you can go over to the rib cage, then drop a rift right there underneath the black orb. Don't activate the black orb yet. Don't imbue the vestige. Drop your rift, swap your loadout, get Arbalest out, look at the boss, imbue the vestige, shoot the boss with Arbalest. Then you're going to do your Chaos Reach, because you're going to be amplified, hopefully. Hopefully you noted and that you should be amplified for Thunderous Retort, because it's like a huge chunk of super damage. And I'm also on Geomag stabilizers, because why not? I'm swapping loadouts already. I may as well swap from the stag. Keep in mind, before I swapped, I put down a stag rift. So I got a good rift before swapping, which is good. That's important. So that means that while I'm doing, when I switch to Arbalest and Geomags, I can break her shield with one shot, and then I could do a Thunderous Retort Chaos Reach for the full duration, which does a lot of damage. So I would say it's worth it. If you're not comfortable with your survivability with the hot swap, you could just keep the stag on. You're just not going to do as much super damage, but you'll have more time to do storm chaser damage anyway. So the difference in damage between using geomags and not using geomags might be negligible, because if the less time you're on Chaos Reach, the more time you're on Storm Chaser, and they do like almost the same amount of damage each. So like here, this is my last damage phase. Yeah. Anyway, there's probably some stuff I left out, but obviously an hour and a half is plenty of time to talk about this dungeon, because I thought I'd be like hemming and hawing about what to talk about for an hour and a half, but it's clearly not an issue. So yeah, there you have it. Anyways, if I feel like there's anything else that should be stated here, like especially about the swapping loadouts, obviously when I swap to my loadout, I have that triple arc weapon surge for the whole 45 seconds, or even longer, and yeah, it means I'm doing big damage, and you can see she hardly teleports. And if you can land a grenade on the boss or on the ads that are nearby while you're doing damage, then you're going to get your rift back quicker, and you can get 2 rifts down for Simmumah, just like you did with Ecthar. But yeah, so that's the loadout for damage. And now I am just collecting my glyph, and there it is. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, and I will see you in the next video. Take care.